Welcome to another economics nugget. Right now, what I'm going to show you is the long run supply curves for a competitive market and how they can differ. Basically, we're going to differentiate between three types of markets, and they're called constant cost markets, increasing cost markets, and decreasing cost markets. And really what this is all about is, in the long run, if more and more and more firms get into a market, what happens to the costs of production in those markets? That's the question of the day. And so we're going to start off looking at the most basic market here, and that's the constant cost industry. This probably describes most industries. And what we're seeing here is, let's say we start out right here with a supply and demand situation in the market. We're at equilibrium, some sort of long-run equilibrium. But then let's say demand for whatever this product is increases. Well, in the short run, you can see that the market price will rise dramatically, and so will the quantity. The market quantity obviously has gone up too. But how is supply going to respond? If it was in long-run equilibrium, we know that the firms in this market were breaking even. The price has gone up since then, and so we know they're making economic profits. Well, economic profits is going to attract more firms into the industry, and this is where the magic happens. We know supply will go up, but the question of the day is, how far will supply go up? Will it go up so much that it will bring the market price, right back down to where it was? Well, if that's the case, then it's a constant cost industry. And quite frankly, how far supply goes up depends on what's going to happen to the costs of production in this industry. In this industry, nothing's going to happen to the costs of production. It's the bottom line. Nothing's going to happen to their costs, and so supply will go up until it reaches the exact same point, until the price reaches the exact same point that it was at in the previous long-run equilibrium, because there'd be no reason for the price to be any different. If the costs were the same, then supply is going to just keep creeping up until we reach another long-run equilibrium and everybody's breaking even and they're earning zero economic profits. So our long-run supply curve ends up looking like this, a straight line, a flat line. All right. Now it's a different story for increasing or decreasing costs, but before we get to that industry, let's just take a look at how this scenario plays out from the perspective of a firm. All right, so firm. Here we're comparing, we can see the slide we just looked at. On the left, that's for the market, and on the right, we've got the firm. And so bear in mind that the marginal revenue curve, or the demand curve for the firm, was being taken from the market. And it was in long-run equilibrium, and that means that marginal revenue curve was tangent to the bottom of the average total cost curve. All right, so that was simple enough. Now let's take a look at how this scenario plays out for an increasing cost industry. So again, let's imagine we have some sort of demand shock here. The demand goes up, and so the price goes up. The price going up produces economic profits. Those economic profits attract more firms into the industry, and so supply goes up. But you'll notice, and this is the new long-run equilibrium here, and you'll notice in the new long-run equilibrium, the price is higher than it was before. Why is that? Well, because this industry, this market, represents a relatively large percentage of its input markets. In other words, if you're making guitar cases and you use a little wood in your, a little plywood in your guitar cases, you could probably double, triple, quadruple the output of guitar cases in the market. And it probably wouldn't cause the price of wood to go up. There's just not that much wood in a guitar case. But if this industry here that we're looking at right now was the housing market, houses are big things. They use a lot of wood in them. Now, if you increased output in the housing market by 10, 20%, you would increase the price of wood because that market represents such a large percentage of the entire demand for wood that it would cause the price of wood to go up. If they tried making more houses, they're going to force their own costs of production higher. And so, yeah, we'll see more supply come into the industry if there's economic profits. And that supply will move up to the point where we start breaking even again, but we'll start breaking even at a higher price. Let's take a look at that from the perspective of a firm. Again, we've got the market to the left and the firm to the right here. So originally, before the demand shock, the marginal revenue was here, the average total cost was here. Then more supply came into the industry, and when those additional firms started buying up, let's imagine, wood to make more houses, well, they forced the cost of wood up. And so they forced the costs for everyone working in this industry, they force those costs higher. And therefore, that forces the long-run equilibrium price in the market to be higher. So everybody just starts breaking even again, but they're breaking even up here instead of breaking even up down here. There are more houses, obviously a lot more houses being made, but all those houses, all the new houses, are costing more to build. All right, so what's the story behind a decreasing cost industry? It's a very different story. It's not simply the opposite of an increasing cost industry. In this case, generally what we're looking at, let's say we've started out at equilibrium. Let's back here, we had a basic equilibrium. And then we've got a demand shock, an increase in the demand. That forces the price higher. Higher price creates economic profits. And so more firms come into the industry. But look what's happened. So many more firms have come into the industry. It's not necessarily more firms. Probably it is. Chances are it is. But I want to point out here, when this happens, it's not just a case of more firms coming into the industry. That does happen. But all the firms in the industry, the new ones and the old ones, they increase their output. Every one of them. They all start making more units of production. And that's what causes this supply curve to raise so drastically. But the question of the day is, why is the new equilibrium at a lower price than the old equilibrium? Well, the story behind the decreasing cost industry is the story behind, the basic story behind new technologies. So the first calculator, I remember the first calculator my dad bought. I think he paid like $100 for it back in the 70s. Now you can basically get a calculator and a box of cereal. As new technologies develop, technologies to make things that just didn't exist at all before. And so the technology used to make them didn't exist at all before. And so we develop these new technologies, we perfect them, we expand them, and what you find is you develop better and better ways of making things, and you also find that as you make more units, you get to spread the costs of production over more and more units. And so all those units become cheaper to make. So this is what it looks like from the perspective of the industry. And if we looked at this from the perspective of a firm, it looks something like this. So originally we had our price for the firm being taken from the market, but then supply increased, and as the market increased its supply, the costs of production, so for example the costs of buying a flat screen to make a computer, to make a laptop computer or something, if all of a sudden you can buy your flat screens for less, then your costs of production have gone down. And so again, these are for competitive firms. All of these scenarios are for competitive firms. They're going to break even in the long run, but in this case, they're going to break even at a lower price. All right. Hey, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time in economics class.